Korea right now has over 5,000 deep underground facilities. So if you think you're never going to see this, like I've had some commanders tell me, you're very, very wrong.
Megacities. Huge, complex, and no place you want to fight a war. But even worse, fighting beneath one.
When you enter a city, something you got to worry about is the sewers, subway tunnels, other underground threats that can pop up at anywhere and cause a problem. So what the Army's doing is they're creating ways to address that. They're teaching people, when you go in that tunnel, you may have to breach a door, you may have to think about gas, you may think about oxygen, explosives, you may have to bring in a canine to go sniff out a threat or go through a door before the soldier does, all in an underground, very constrained or limited environment. And so the Army's doing this training now with the 82nd Airborne here at Fort Bragg. We're here to check some of it out. So here at Fort Bragg with the 82nd Airborne is where that training comes down to the troops. So we're going to go through some evolutions of that training with members of the 1st Brigade Combat Team.
So everybody know what these are, right? We cut locks off guys.
So Captain Miller, we're here to see some training. Can you tell us a little bit about where we're at, what we're looking at, what's going on today?
So we're out here today, part of the Maneuver Center of Excellence. So I'm actually with the Asymmetric Warfare Group. We're training 1st Brigade Combat Team of the 82nd Airborne Division on subterranean operations. And really we're focused on tactics that pertain to the underground environment. The kit has a variety of different tools in it. These are their Power Hawks, which are actually a battery-operated Jaws of Life type unit.
All it is a battery. You slap it on, press the power button, and same thing, open, close. So you would use this for breaching doors, opening doors, ripping them open.
Now, I guess you don't always have pneumatic tools on hand, or maybe it's not always feasible. So there's also just straight up muscle power sometimes you got to put into things, right?
Absolutely, soldiers being soldiers. So what we're showing them here is just tools that can be manually carried on the back of soldiers, and you can actually have multiple kits within the formation. And these are really similar to firefighters' tools, and we're teaching them how to utilize those tools in order to breach lower level doors that will show some resistance through the process of getting through. But what we're doing over here is teaching the basics and familiarizing the soldiers with how to use a thermal breaching tool to get through a reinforced door.
Thermal breaching is nothing more than using devices and tools to burn through, that produce extremely high temperatures through burn through mechanisms. So you can gain entry into a secure area. That's what we're about. Get in there and kill the enemy. Korea right now has over 5,000 deep underground facilities. The JSOC community can only handle 4. Guess who's going to handle the rest? The guys in Korea are training on all the breaching techniques for sub-T. But if somebody has to back him up, guess who's going to be? Looks like you guys.
Tarawa. The Japs had to be shot, blown, and burned out of their coral fortress.
Though some of what is being trained is new, this is far from the first time the military has dealt with the subterranean, from trench warfare in World War I to caves and bunkers in World War II, and even more well-known, the tunnel rats of the Vietnam War. Even in the most recent wars like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, underground threats dotted the battlefield, from rural mountains to major cities.
The really difficult thing for the military is we don't know what we're going to fight next. So the military has to be prepared for all of these kinds of environments, fighting in jungles, in mountains, in deserts, in urban terrain. It's certainly very critical for the military. The world is becoming increasingly urbanized. An increasing proportion of the population is going to be living in cities and large cities. And the military's got to be prepared for those kinds of environments.
So Paul, can you talk about like the ways that maybe the military, the U.S. military at least, treated cities in the past versus now, and why we have to go into them?
Yeah, all things being equal, we would prefer not to fight in cities or underground. That's challenging terrain. But the enemy gets a vote. We may not get that choice. So the reality is we may have to go underground because our adversaries are underground, they're hiding there, or there are things we care about underground, like sensitive WMD sites.
So Captain, we've seen a lot of like pieces of this larger puzzle, kind of building blocks leading up to today, but today they're kind of moving more as a cohesive unit. What are we going to see inside these buildings today?
Yeah, so today basically what we're doing is we're starting to compile the things that they've been learning at each of the stations in the past 3 days. So what we'll do is we have multiple different scenarios where we're going to start to introduce those stressors and make them actually run an entire situational exercise with some of those stressors or enablers or just those other components and tie them into a full mission.
We are standing inside here, the squad's about to rush in, they're gonna have some ammunition round shooting at paper targets. We're trying to avoid that, of course, as we watch them kind of approach the building, come in, take over all the weak points, and do their SWAT tactics.
Door left, door right. Door left.
Here. Oh, good boy. Next up.
So right behind me, a squad's gonna come through that door. They're gonna be going down the hallway, covering each doorway, and basically leaping forward, providing rear security, forward security.
This thing will definitely liquefy your eyeball. Like.
Know when to get ready.
What we're doing out here is actually no different than we've previously done. We're just learning, hey, this is underground, so things change, specifically like oxygen. How much time should we be underground? Probably no more than an hour. Do we have the assets to continue moving underground? Are we gonna outrun our sustainment? That's a scary thought. Going a mile underneath the tunnel with not a lot of sustainment because it's not wide enough for vehicles to get down there. Those are the things that we need to prepare for and start thinking about for the unknown fight.
So what we saw this past week with the 82nd Airborne is something that's being repeated across the Army. I mean, brigade after brigade, some have already received this training, some will receive this training. It's building blocks, it's introduction. Much of it is very similar to what they might see in some standard urban training or close quarters battle inside buildings and around buildings, but they got to take in all these other limiting factors. Think about using enablers such as dogs, robots, chemical detection, welding, breaching, all these different add-ons in that very tight, confined, kind of scary environment of subterranean. So this is a real world situation. I mean, there are places in Korea, near Israel, Eastern Europe, locations, even cities in Iraq and Afghanistan, cave systems, tunnels, sewer systems that have to be dealt with. They are a feature of the modern battlefield, and these brigades have to be ready for them. This is a beginning step toward that, and there's a lot more to do that these commanders have to think about.